Hi, coaches. Want to talk about coaching first base today. Something that I think is oft neglected. Not very many opportunities to learn about coaching first base. So a few bullet points here that I hope will help you, all with regards to positioning. And the two things that we need to focus on are, one, we need to be safe, and two, we need to be able to see what we need to see to play our position. Okay, just like any other position on the field, they're where they need to be so they can see everything that can help them make decisions. The same applies to being a first base coach. And typically what we see, because there's not a focus on coaching this position, is this is where they stand. On the home plate side, often in a not very athletic position, think about the first base coach standing there with their arms crossed, as close as they could possibly be to a batter who's trying to hit the ball as hard as they possibly can, and just putting their health in jeopardy. So the first thing I'd suggest is, if you're going to choose one end of the coach's box, choose this end. It's a little bit safer. But we can even extend farther back than that in order to see anything that can help us make a decision. And in this environment, or this situation here, there's nobody on. The first baseman is playing straight up their back. What can we do here? Well, there could be a base hit. On a base hit, there's not too much for us to do. We can help them make a decision about whether they should go to second and things like that. Perhaps the biggest role we have is if there's an error, if there's an overthrow at first base, helping the batter runner, make a decision about whether to go to second base. Standing here makes that even harder, okay? Because tying this into point 2, we are going to have to move in order to gather all of the information that we could. Who could be involved in this play? The first baseman's going to come over here. The catcher is moving to back up. The right fielder might be moving to back up, or the second baseman could be moving to back up. And if we're here, inevitably, we are going to be working in circles to gain all of this information. Is there a perfect position? Probably not. But back here, I would argue, is a much easier position to gain information. We're going to see, without having to move, the runner arrive at first base. We're going to see without having to move very much, moving our head, not our whole body, maybe even just our eyes. The catcher will be in our field of vision. For the second baseman and or right fielder, perhaps we have to move. But we've got way more cues in front of us to help us to make a decision as to whether the batter runner should try and take second base. Okay, so in terms of being safe and being able to see everything that you need to see, deeper positioning wins. Let's move on to another situation. This might be where we're standing closest to home plate. Runner on first base, maybe it's first and third, and in this situation, the runner's being held on by the first baseman. Typically, we're trying to be in line with the pitcher's throw to first base. We're giving ourselves an angle that is very similar to the runner's angle, so that we can help them make decisions about coming back to first base. We might not be that far away from the line, but again, we're positioning ourselves safely because there's every chance that the pitcher's throw evades the first baseman, and we want to be safe. The closer we are to the line, the less safe we are. Okay, but even here, I am not posted up at the front of the box, putting my health in jeopardy, especially when my gaze is always going to go from the pitcher to the batter a little bit later than it would in other situations, because we have to look after a runner and make sure they don't get picked. A final scenario for you is with a runner on first base, but the runner is not being held. Either it's first and second, bases loaded, with 2 outs, or just we're up for whatever reason, the first baseman's playing deep. I am going to try and position myself level with the first baseman, and possibly even deeper. I'm going to take as much depth as the umpire will allow me to do. And typically, you see umpires will enforce the rule at the front of the box, which I think is absolutely fair because it relates to your safety. But we don't see umpires tend to keep you in the box on the backside, which makes sense because it's also related to safety. Okay, so I'm going to get as deep as I possibly can. Let's imagine our coach's box is a little bit longer than the rule book. And now I'm going to be able to see every player that's going to have something to do with me being able to look after the runner. And the example we'll give is if the defenders want to run a predetermined back pick. So there's some communication going on between the first baseman and the catcher. It's going to be a modified pitch out or something of that nature, and the first baseman is going to be coming in behind for the pick. If I'm up here as a base coach, the cues I have for that are the catcher throwing, and that's it. By being up here, I'm going to be able to see the first baseman and the catcher and have a better sense of where my runner is, which is another reason to stand back here, is if you're up here as a coach, whether or not the defenders are going to run a pick or not, you can help this runner with their lead size based on the first baseman's positioning without having to move your head and be concerned about whether or not the runner, or excuse me, the batter is going to hit a ball at you. Okay? Most importantly, I want to see you guys be safe, and standing at the home plate end of the coach's box is not the safe place to be. There's going to be times as a third base coach where you have to get a little bit less safe. We'll talk about that another day. But at first base, there's seldom, if ever, a reason to be up here on the home plate side. Okay? We want you to be in a position to gain as much information as possible without having to move, whether that's physically take steps or move your head. Okay, you want to be in a position to gain as much information as possible, and ultimately you're going to do a better job playing your position. Just like the shortstop, just like the base runner, just like the batter, just like the center fielder, just like the pitcher, we expect them to play their position, whether you are a coach or not. Whether you have to run out there for an inning at a time and coach first base, you can play your position to a higher level, and somewhere in there, there'll be an opportunity to help your team score a run, win a game, and maybe that leads to a championship. Worst case, you're just going to enjoy the experience a little bit more by playing your position, just as you would enjoy it playing shortstop. Thanks for your time. We'll come back to third base another day. Bye-bye.